Good morning, friends. Let's sing together. We're going to start with a little Sia Hamba. If you're in the hymn book, it's the Teal hymn book, hymn number 1030. Roy Zimmerman is joining us for today's service, so we'll have some guitar and some great singing. And how about a little percussion? Do you feel like making some sound? I got some shakers, some drums. Feels like it. All right. What do you want, Tim? We're going to start with some Zulu, and then we'll do some English, and then we'll come back to the Zulu. Don't be intimidated. Just do your best. The lyrics will be projected up on the screen, and if you're joining us online, the lyrics will be projected in the chat. So, we're all set, except we need to stand up, don't you think? How will we do it if we're not standing up? Sia hamba ikwenko, sia hamba ikwenko, sia hamba ikwenko, sia hamba ikwenko, sia hamba sia hamba sia hamba ikwenko, sia hamba sia hamba sia hamba ikwenko. Marching. We are marching in the light of God. 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 We are marching, we are marching in good. We are marching in the light of God. We are marching, we are marching in good. We are marching in the light of God. We are singing 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 in the light of God. Oh, we are singing, we are singing, we are singing in the light of God. We are singing, we are singing, we are singing in the light of God. We are dancing 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 in the light of God. We are dancing, dancing, we are dancing, we are dancing in the light of God. We are dancing, dancing, we are dancing, we are dancing in the light of God. See a hamba kukanyen, see a hamba kukanyen when cold. See a hamba kukanyen, see a hamba kukanyen when cold. See a hamba, see a hamba, see a hamba kukanyen when cold. See a hamba, see a hamba, see a hamba kukanyen when cold. You're fantastic. Just keep the percussion at your seats. We'll access them later. Thank you.
Good morning. Welcome to the Olympia UU congregation. Our community envisions an interconnected world that is loving, just, and healthy. We commit to live out our mission to welcome and wonder, embrace and empower, bridge and become. Thank you for joining us today. You are welcome here just as you are, whatever beliefs sustain you, whomever you love, however you understand and express your identity, and in all the ways you are still becoming the person you will be. My name is Whitney Godby. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm a member of the worship arts team. I'm a white woman in my late 30s, and today I'm wearing a green dress with ginkgo leaves on it. Leading worship with me today is our affiliated community minister, Reverend Carol McKinley, Troy Fisher, our music director, guest musician Roy Zimmerman, and Reverend Sarah Lewis, the director of community and faith development. Here are a few things that you should know about our service today. We're streaming live on Zoom and YouTube, and the service is being recorded. For those here in the sanctuary, you can use subtitles in the screen on front and on Zoom if you're online. We are a multi-generational community, and we value our young ones. Kids, babies, and teens are all welcome here in the sanctuary. There is also nursery care and a storytime program just in the hallway. We also have fluffy chairs and activities for your hands so everyone can be comfortable. We are grateful for the many hands that helped make worship happen this morning. Thank you to all who contribute in so many ways. After the service, everyone will have the chance to discuss reflection questions offered by Reverend Carol. And for those online, we invite you to stay in a breakout room for a virtual coffee chat. For those in person, please feel free to stay for coffee in the Commons. At 11:30, after the coffee chat, please return to the main room or sanctuary for a time with a forum on faith in action at OUUC. This month's spiritual theme at OUUC is the practice of deep listening. All are welcome to join Reverend Sarah for a spiritual practice mini retreat next Saturday, October 12th, from 10 a.m. to noon to explore spiritual practices of deep listening. You can find registration information in the weekly announcements on the website, or you can contact Reverend Sarah for help with registering. There are many things happening at OUUC. Check out the Tuesday electronic update or the website for the most up-to-date information. Now let us open our hearts and minds as we prepare for worship. It is good to be together. This morning, we join Unitarian Universalist congregations around the world in lighting a chalice, the symbol of our faith community. If you are online and have a chalice or candle, please join us as we light our chalices together with the words of Maureen Killeran. As the kindling of this chalice calls us to community, let there be light. As the flames of this chalice remind us of our values, let there be light. As the glow of this chalice encourages us to hope, let there be light. And we light this candle in honor of the Reverend Mary Geer, our settled minister, on this her 16th week of sabbatical. We light our candle here each week to help us sustain our bond with her and stay present to the spirit of renewal. We know that her matching candle will light her way home to us come November.
We light a memorial candle this morning in honor of Jan Spiller, who died Saturday, September 16th, 2024. With this candle, we share our grief at her death and lift up our gratitude for Jan Spiller and all she brought to OUUC and to this larger community. Jan had a rock collection. Her daughters invite anyone who would like to send a rock to add to that in memory of her to do so, or, of course, cards would be welcome as well. Please ask Rosie in the office for the address of her daughter. Once again, good morning. I'm Reverend Carol McKinley. I'm an older white woman. I have on a multicolored jacket in the colors of fall, and I'm wearing a stole decorated with olive branches and a dove. Good morning. Our opening words are adopted from those of the Reverend Kendall Gibbons. Out of communities of diverse heritage and belief, we come together to share our hope, and to create good in this world. The prophets of all traditions and times have taught that we are called to mercy, generosity, and care. And to be great is to be served. May the power of our various faiths sustain us in this work, that we may be the hands of holy creativity and justice, and together build a better world. Come, let us worship together.
And let's sing together again out of the Teal Hymn Book, Jim Scott's hymn number 1052, The Oneness of Everything. I invite you to rise in body and or spirit. We'll leave the percussion alone for this song, unless you just have to do it. Far beyond the grasp of hands, or lights that meet the eye, past the reaches of the mind, there find the keys to nature's harmony, in an architecture so entwined, like the birds whose patterns grace the sky, and carry all who join in love expanding. The message of peace will rise in flight, taking the weight of the world upon its wings. In the oneness of everything, peace is in the dance of trees, who stir before the first breath of wind is yet perceived. Trust in the song becoming one with the dance, and all mysteries can be believed. Songs of life's past and touch our own are written in the earth ever giving, and now to maintain the harmony gives to us all life's worth living, for the oneness of everything. Still we seek to find the truth that we might understand and reduce to terms defined, vast and immeasurable time and space, all solved overwhelmingly designed. Oh, passing years, just might I know the faith that winters in the hearts to be reborn in spring, to hear and to feel the pulse of life enters my soul as a song to sing of the oneness of everything. Thank you for singing.
Good morning. I have a story to share with you today that is a true story told by interfaith organizer, author, and American Muslim Eboo Patel. Patel shares in his book that he became an interfaith organizer because of being an American Muslim. That in the Quran, it's written that Allah said, "I made you many tribes and nations so that you might learn to know one another." And Eboo Patel feels that here in America, with all the diversity of belief and identity, here is the perfect place for humanity to learn to know one another. In Patel's office, there hangs a print of the Norman Rockwell painting, Freedom of Worship. In this painting, there is a Muslim holding a Quran near a Catholic woman fingering a rosary. Many people of many different faiths and identities all stand facing the same direction, their heads bowed, their hands clasped in piety and prayer. They're all comfortable near each other, but it's interesting, Patel notes, that in the painting, none look at each other and none are in dialogue with each other. So Ibu Patel shares this story of why this all became important to him. He grew up in the western suburbs of Chicago, and when he was in high school, he had a diverse group of friends that all sat and ate lunch together, which included a Muslim, a Jew, a Hindu, a Mormon, a Catholic, and a Lutheran. And they all ate together, and they all were, in some degree and respect, fairly religious, and yet they never talked about it with each other. Sometimes it might come up because somebody would say, oh, they couldn't eat something, or that they couldn't eat at all for a certain period of time, and they knew that behind that, the reason was religious, but they still never really talked about it beyond because my mom said so. After graduating, a few years after graduating, Patel writes that he had a conversation with his Jewish friend about a time in high school that they both wished hadn't happened. That some bullies and thugs in the high school had taken to spreading anti-Semitic slurs around school, writing them on desks, shouting them in hallways. And Patel had done nothing. He had ignored this. He had not tried to confront the bullies or to comfort his Jewish friend. His friend shared with Patel that these had been very difficult days when he was afraid to come to school, yes, but even more so, he was heartbroken that his closest friends did nothing. And Patel recounts hearing this story from his friend of his own failure to act and feeling it to be one of the most humiliating and greatest learning conversations of his life. He realized that believing in pluralism wasn't enough. You have to have the courage to act on it. And Patel shares that for him is the difference between a belief and an opinion. A belief comes with the courage to act. And that if he believed in pluralism, he needed to do something about it. Patel ended his story with a quote from poet Gwendolyn Brooks. "We are each other's business. We are each other's harvest. We are each other's magnitude and bond." And if we believe in pluralism, we need to organize to act. Thus ends our story for today.
Let us pause in life's pleasures and count its many tears and pay heed to the sorrows of the poor. There's a song that will linger forever in our ears. Oh, hard times come again no more. It's a song, a sigh of the weary. Hard times come again no more. Many days have you lingered around my cabin door. Oh, hard times come again no more. As we seek mirth and beauty and music bright and gay, there are frail forms fainting at the door. Though their voices are silent, their pleading eyes will say, oh, hard times come again no more. It's a song, a sigh of the weary. Hard times come again no more. Many days have you lingered around my cabin door. Oh, hard times come again no more. It's a sigh that is wafted across the troubled wave. It's a cry that is heard upon the shore. It's a dirge that is murmured around the lowly grave. Oh, hard times come again no more. I can tell that some of you know this song. And those of you who don't have heard the chorus a couple of times, so sing along with me. It's a sigh, it's a song, a sigh of the weary. Here we go. It's a song, a sigh of the weary. Hard times come again no more. Many days have you lingered, many days have you lingered around my cabin door. Oh, hard times come again no more. Many days have you lingered around my cabin door. Oh, hard times come again no more.
Thank you, Roy. Each Sunday, we engage in the spiritual practices of generosity and gratitude by joining together in service to our community and to something greater than ourselves. We each have the power to share, and when we combine our gifts to create an offering, we're able to do more together than any of us can do alone. We also express our gratitude for the gifts that life has given us, for the network of relationships in which we live, and for the presence of this community. If you are new or visiting us, welcome. You are our guest, and we don't expect you to contribute. But if you are moved to be part of our offering, what you share will be most gratefully received. The offering collected here does two things. It helps support the ongoing work of the congregation, which is also supported by your regular pledges. The offering also supports an organization that serves our community in harmony with our Unitarian Universalist values. Our Share the Plate organization for September and October is All Kids Win. This is what they share about their work. All Kids Win envisions a community in which hunger never gets in the way of student success. Created in April 2006, when caring community volunteers recognized a weekend food security gap in local and middle high school students, they currently provide weekend food bags to more than 1,100 students per week during the school year. This food provides a basic need to students in Thurston County. May the offering now be generously given as it is gratefully received.
If one stone was thrown at you, one for every stone you threw, how long would you stand with another stone in hand before you fell to your knees, crying, please have mercy, have mercy, have mercy, have mercy, mercy. Are you angry and afraid in the world of war you've made? Eye for eye, tooth for tooth, and no closer to the truth. What will it take for you to heed your own need? Have mercy. Have mercy. Have mercy. Have mercy. Mercy. All the words that you use to abuse and condemn say much more about you than they do about them. Tell me now, what did you do to be here, to be born you? Fear for fear, hate for hate, would you put it down to fate? If you were one of the least of these, cry and please, have mercy. Have mercy. Have mercy, have mercy, mercy.
Thank you, Roy. Thank you all for your generous gifts. We came together this morning bringing all that is in our lives. Let us open our hearts to the complexity of life as we place stones in the water of community. You'll hear a drumbeat as we share today. It brings into our awareness that our individual hearts beat, and together we create the heartbeat of community. Right now, I invite you to take a breath as we open our hearts to receive the complexity of all that is in our lives and is in our communities today. For those online, I invite you to share from your heart by entering in the chat. Those in the sanctuary can see your sharing on the screen. For those in person today, I invite you to come forward if there is something you would like to bring into the heart of this community. You may place a stone in the water as you hold your sharing in your heart. Please come up through the side aisle and return by the center aisle. Let us hear the heartbeat of our community and reach out our hearts in love and care to all those who share. We place a stone in the water for all that is being and has been shared online, shared from the heart. We'll place one more stone in the water for all that we hold in our hearts and that remains unspoken. As we hold in our hearts all those joys and sorrows shared this morning, let us come together in the spirit of prayer and meditation with Wendell Berry's poem, "The Peace of Wild Things." When despair grows in me, and I wake in the middle of the night at the least sound in fear of what my life and my children's lives may be, I go and lie down where the wood drake rests in his beauty on the water, and the great heron feeds. I come into the peace of wild things who do not tax their lives with forethought of grief. I come into the presence of still water, and I feel above me the day-blind stars waiting for their light. For a time, I rest in the grace of this world, and I am free. Let us hold a moment of silence together.
Oh, what will you give me? Say the sad bells of Rimney. Is there hope for the future? Cry the brown bells of Merthyr. And who made the mine owner? Say the black bells of Rhonda. And who robbed the miner? Cry the grim bells of Blaina. They will plunder willy-nilly. Cry the bells of Carfilly. They have fangs, they have teeth. Shout the loud bells of Neath. Even God is uneasy. Say the moist bells of Swansea. And what will you give me? Say the sad bells of Rimney. Throw the vandals in court. Cry the bells of Newport. All will be well if. Say the green bells of Cardiff. Why so worried, sister, why? Sing the silver bells of wine. And what will you give me? Say the sad bells of Rumney. Ah, what will you give me? Say the sad bells of Rumney.
Today's first reading is from Andrew Whitehead, the co-director for the Center for the Study of Religion and American Culture at Indiana University and Purdue University, Indianapolis. He writes, "White Christian nationalism is a cultural framework asserting that civic life in the United States should be organized according to a particular form of conservative Christianity. In addition to the standard Christian religious and theological beliefs, Christian nationalism brings with it a host of cultural assumptions about who really matters and who should be in charge of life in the United States, primarily white Christian citizens. Christian nationalism is not interested in a government for the people, by the people, but rather for a particular people, by a particular people. Christian nationalism weakens the church by demanding it seek earthly, self-interested power rather than seeking to support and serve the marginalized."
Back when the pilgrims landed on these rocks, they thanked the Lord and they wrung out their socks. They were escaping those religious tyrannies, so they said, geez, let us worship as we please. They knew the strictures of their scriptures would never fail them, and so they started lighting fires on the pyres in Salem. Freedom to oppress in the name of righteousness. Religious freedom to scratch where it itches. Religious freedom to burn our own witches. Y'all know the story of the first Thanksgiving, historical origins of Martha Stewart living. They feasted with the Wampanoag on that shore, and they wiped out the Pequot in the Pequot War. They knew God sent them to this Eden among the heathen to say, convert to our dear Lord or you won't be breathing. Freedom to oppress in the name of righteousness. Religious freedom to scratch where it itches. Religious freedom to burn our own witches. Then all the colonies said, what the hell? We don't need a king, let's ring the Liberty Bell. All men are equal, no one's lesser or greater, and we're endowed with certain rights by our Creator. And that was sweet, but what made liberty even sweeter was they could still own slaves according to Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, 2 Kings, and 1 Peter. So we the people formed a nation, and the Bill of Rights ensures I'm free to practice my religion, and you're free to practice mine. Ain't that divine? Slavery opened up a national wound. Much blood was spilled before the Union reunioned. They saved the nation in that Civil War. Our fathers brought 7 years before. And some were certain they could hear the Almighty saying, don't mix the races, segregate and start KKKing. Freedom to oppress in the name of righteousness. Freedom to persecute in a biblical pursuit. Religious freedom to burn. I'll tell you what would make America great. Make it an autocratic, theocratic state where Jesus rules all men and women, especially women. So come election day, you know I'm writing him in. And we'll give the Constitution a new addendum. We'll take all those civil rights and officially end them. Freedom to oppress in the name of righteousness. Religious freedom to scratch where it itches. Religious freedom to burn our own witches. Our religious freedom to scratch where it itches. Religious freedom to burn, 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 burn our own witches.
Thank you, Roy. That was a good intro to our next reading and to the sermon today. This reading is from Forrest Church. He's a late theologian and minister of All Souls Unitarian Church in New York City. He wrote in his book, The American Creed, a spiritual and patriotic primer. America is not a Christian nation. It is, however, a religious one. The founders recognized that freedom is a morally neutral quality defined by the objects to which it is devoted. Without a moral mooring, our liberties run the risk of lapsing into license. The American Creed does not play favorites when it comes to theology. Atheists receive the same protections under law that fundamentalists do. It does, however, rest on a moral foundation. To abridge people's religious freedom cuts against the American grain, but no more decisively than to exercise freedom without a sense of moral responsibility. Let us take now just a moment for silent reflection. The Reverend Dr. Forrest Church, the author of that second reading from the American Creed, has been called America's public theologian. In his book, Church defines the American Creed as comprised of distinctive elements of American identity first formulated in the Declaration of Independence: life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. He emphasized that nowhere in that document or in the Constitution is there mention of this nation having a specific religious identity. In fact, the only reference to religion in those foundational documents is in Article 6 of the Constitution. No religious test shall ever be required as a qualification to any office or public trust under the United States. The role of government is to ensure that everyone in this nation be treated equally, justly, and with recognition of their full humanity in order to enjoy life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And yes, we all admit that the fulfillment of that role has at times been imperfect. After all, fully living into the American Creed has never been easy. Resistance has opposed change ever since the founding of this nation. It influenced the writing of our Constitution, which denied full humanity and equal rights to Black persons, to women. It led to laws that controlled not only those immigrants from Ireland, Italy, Central Europe, China, Japan, Mexico, Central America, but restricted the rights of this country's original native inhabitants. We have seen that when the status quo in this country is threatened by change such as immigration that brings people from all over the world to these shores, upsetting the balance of power held by generations by one dominant force group. That group can gather their followers to protect their well-entrenched status quo and resist any change. Today, the status quo is again threatened, and religion is being used once again as a means of defense and offense. But make no mistake, there is nothing that many of us would recognize as religious in those efforts. Christian nationalism is that movement, specifically white male Christian nationalism, since the organizers are predominantly white and male, reflecting the hyper-masculinity of Christian nationalism. So I'll repeat those words: white, male, Christian citizens. Picture, if you will, all those who don't fit into those categories. Are you a person of color? Biracial? Many in this sanctuary this morning may identify as white, and you are citizens. But do you, as a Unitarian Universalist, consider yourself Christian? Like many of you, I do not. So where does that leave those who are Jewish, Buddhist, Muslim, Hindu, Sikh, Wiccan, atheist? And who is a Christian? I've always understood a Christian to be one who believes Jesus to be the Son of God, a Jewish rabbi who taught that love of God, love of neighbor, charity, forgiveness of those who have wronged you, that's what it meant to be a faithful Christian. Christian nationalism, in contrast, is not about love, care for the underprivileged, forgiveness. It is instead a gross distortion of Jesus' teachings, using the language and the symbols of Christianity, the cross, Christian prayer, or a saying, Jesus saves. So it's very understandable that this fusion of national identity with religious identity can confuse observers. This past August, I attended the symposium. That's an annual event presented by our Unitarian Universalist Seminary in Berkeley, the Star King School for the Ministry. This year, the symposium topic was the Christian nationalist threat to democracy and to the church. During the symposium's 3 days, speakers sorted out the history that lay behind the current upswelling of Christian nationalism, why it attracts followers, and how this political movement endangers not only democracy and the freedom to practice a religion of one's choice, but the church itself, and how those of us committed to a liberating and transformative faith can respond. The merging of national and Christian identities has long been a cover for white supremacy and racial subjugation. Various forms of it have appeared in the past. It is seen in the doctrine of discovery, that 15th century document that claimed all lands discovered by white European explorers to be Christian lands, and condemned the cultural and religious traditions practiced by the indigenous peoples. It has surfaced when certain events have threatened to upset the social and power balance that those in power would like to maintain. The Ku Klux Klan was organized using rhetoric steeped in Christian language and the image of the burning cross to terrorize black residents during Reconstruction and in later years. One major clash happened less than 100 years ago in the 20th century. The Scopes trial, commonly referred to as the Scopes monkey trial, occurred in 1925 when the Tennessee high school teacher John Scopes was accused of violating a state law that forbade the teaching of human evolution in any state-funded school. Now, unfortunately, this seemingly extinct challenge to teaching the scientific theory of evolution has not gone away. It is occurring in 2024 as well. Some states are requiring the teaching of the Bible's creation story as history in conjunction with Darwinian theory. And efforts to include one interpretation of religious teachings continues. We are familiar with Louisiana's legislation requiring the posting of the Bible's 10 Commandments in every state school classroom, with efforts in the nation to control women's reproductive choices. So it's understandable why that label, Christian nationalism, can be confusing. But it has no resemblance to the Christianity that was an important part of my family's life as I was growing up. Each Sunday, I went with my family to our Presbyterian church, and I went to Sunday school. And of course, I attended church camp on Lake Coeur d'Alene. And at that church, I was taught that my responsibility as a Christian was to love God and to follow Jesus' teachings of being kind, loving our neighbors, and caring for those less fortunate. Although as an adult I left that denomination, I still value what I learned at Manitou Presbyterian Church, and where I saw practiced, of course, not always practiced perfectly. As our minister, Reverend Top, would tell us, that's why it's called practice. My experience with other Christian churches, as well as with Judaism, Islam, Buddhism, and indigenous practices, has deepened my understanding of what it means to be a person of faith. I appreciate how all traditions share many values, honoring a God that may be known by many names, caring for this creation, supporting and serving the marginalized, striving to be the best human being we can be. Christian nationalism, in contrast, demeans and weakens Christianity. It is a reactive political movement that is all about order. It asserts that civic life, not just religious life, but political and community life, should be organized according to a particular form of conservative Christianity, built on the expectation that white Christian citizens should be in charge of life in this country, by demanding that power be reserved for their particular group. America's white citizens are thus assured that they are members of a privileged class. I'd like to step back just for a moment and draw the distinction between patriotism and nationalism. Patriotism is a love of one's country, and we might express it by displaying the flag at our home, singing the Star-Spangled Banner before a ball game, celebrating the 4th of July with flags, parades, and fireworks and picnics. Nationalism, on the other hand, is not an expression of love of country. No, it says that allegiance to one particular understanding of country demands supremacy over all other allegiances, including over our own one religion. By merging nationalism with Christian language and imagery, the movement offers a common identity to attract and hold its followers. And yes, that merging can be very confusing. It is important to keep in mind that Christian nationalism is not about religion. It's about power. It's about power and control, using language that inspires fear and distrust of government. It is rooted in several myths that the followers accept as, excuse the ironic use of the word, accept as the gospel truth. First myth is that America is a Christian nation chosen by God to be the new Jerusalem. Second, God's providential hand is evident in American history, in its glorious past, and in today's politics. Third, American exceptionalism is real. This country's success is part of God's plan. The saying, "God is on our side," is thus affirmed. As most of us learned in our high school history class, this nation's founders went to great lengths to ensure that America was not declared to be a Christian nation and did not adhere to any one religion, as evidenced in that Article 6, what I read earlier, of the Constitution. But from the perspective of a Christian nationalist, the common good would include having the federal government declare that the United States to be a Christian nation, then develop legislation built around Christian values, but only values as Christian nationalists interpret them. Strict laws on divorce, for example. No teaching of critical race theory. No gay marriage. Severe restrictions and prohibitions on non-Christian immigrants to this country. No, Christian nationalism vision for our country is not to be the democratic republic imagined by this nation's founders. Christian nationalism is not interested in a government for the people, by the people, but rather a government for a particular people, by a particular people. Christian nationalism distorts and demeans Christianity by demanding it seek earthly, self-interested power, rather than seeking to support and serve all people, especially the marginalized. No one draws the line between Christian nationalism and Christianity more clearly than Texas State Representative James Tallarico. In addition to serving in the Texas legislature, Tallarico is a devout Christian and a seminarian studying to be a Presbyterian minister. In a sermon at his home church in Austin, Tallarico begins by saying, "There is nothing Christian about Christian nationalism." He uses biblical references, then expands on that statement. He emphasizes that while Christianity liberates, Christian nationalism controls. While Christianity urges social change, Christian nationalism pushes to maintain the status quo so one privileged group holds on to resources and to civic power. The Jewish rabbi Jesus, says Tallarico, called for people to practice radical love by turning the world upside down, challenging the oppressive power structure. Jesus taught that radical love means sharing, not greed, peace, not violence, care for the poor, for making sure all children are housed, clothed, and fed, not teaching exploitation. It means sharing power, not having it hoarded by the few. It means holding true to an ancient teaching, to love God and one's neighbor as oneself. A teaching, emphasizes Tallarico, shared by all world religions. Andrew Whitehead, the scholar whose word you heard in the earlier reading, says that in contrast to what many learn to be Christian beliefs, Christian nationalism holds up three idols: power, fear, and violence. They are a distortion of Christianity's understanding of God, of Jesus, of the gospel message. They are a distortion of the realities of living in a diverse, democratic society where deeper understanding, collaboration, and compromise are needed for effective, peaceful living in community. James Tallarico calls the ability to share and cooperate humanity's superpower, A superpower that thrives in the diversity we see all around us, he says, expressed through the wonderful creativity we find in the world's art, music, cultures, and in nature itself. Yes, despite the promises and benefits, democracy is sometimes, if not often, messy. It can be frustrating and very time-consuming. Many of us have seen this to be true in our lifetimes as social justice movements through the decades regularly threaten the status quo and the balance of power. Emancipation, the women's movement, civil rights movement, gay liberation, and most recently, transgender equality and liberation. All of these justice movements have incited resistance, often violent resistance, from those who hold or create their own narrow interpretation of biblical and Christian teachings, especially of the place in society of power who do not look like those in power. To solve these irritating problems by justice movements, Christian nationalism chooses the use of power to repress them. James Tallarico calls this the virus of religious extremism and calls upon people of faith, and that means all faiths, to resist this dangerous movement by living the teachings of their open, inclusive faiths, sharing beloved stories, traditions, and practices to heal and nurture our souls. Peace, hope, and love always need strengthening, and coming together in a community of love and faith, whatever that community might be called, Presbyterian, Catholic, Muslim, Jewish, Hindu, Unitarian, Universalist, is the best way to combat the religious extremism virus. Our communities of faith are, after all, where we come. This is where we come to be reminded that true, authentic religious practices are love of others, welcoming the stranger, sharing life's abundance with each other, caring for the poor and the persecuted. Amanda Taylor, author of How to End Christian Nationalism, was one of the Star King Symposium speakers. She heads the group Christians Against Christian Nationalism. And, said Taylor with a laugh before her Unitarian Universalist audience, you don't have to identify as a Christian in order to use their resources. This organization offers suggestions for ways to better understand the threats that this reactionary movement poses for democracy. And it offers ways to help friends and neighbors become more aware. She urges concerned persons to pay particular attention to what is happening in this nation's public schools. After all, that's where efforts are being made to promote the Christian nation mythology, to promote only the Abrahamic faith values, ban books they find objectionable, and to promote bills like the recent Don't Say Gay legislation in Florida. The website ChristiansAgainstChristianNationalism.com offers many suggestions for ways to respond to the anti-democracy, anti-religion movement. At the end of the symposium's 3 days, I reflected on what I'd learned from the excellent and wise speakers, and I found the words that remained with me were spoken by Pastor Jacqueline Duhart, Star King's Director of Spiritual Development. She reminded all of us that democracy is always threatened, and that we, as people of a progressive faith, do not have the option to give up, drop out, or run away from the challenges brought by those who would nurture fear and promote autocracy. We must hold up our values to honor the worth and value of each person, continue to advocate for the protection of all people's rights, and advocate for democracy itself. Let us think of ourselves, said Pastor Duhart, as spiritual first responders. Run toward, not from. Let us then practice being spiritual first responders by supporting our Christian and non-Christian neighbors as each of us works to ensure the free practice of religion in this democratic republic. In doing so, let us always be reminded that we are all becoming more human by connecting with our human and non-human world through love, kindness, and compassion. We are, after all we have. So join with others to form your own spiritual responder unit. Spread the good news that faith helps us transform ourselves, strengthening us to bring more love to all those with whom we share this world. Together, there is nothing we cannot do. Amen, and so may it be.
Thank you. Let's sing together again. Thank you, Roy, for making music with us today. So great to have you here. Come and go with me. Hymn number 1018, I invite you to rise in body and or spirit. And percussion, bring it on.
We extinguish our chalice with these words from Maya Angelou. History, despite its wrenching pain, cannot be unlived, but if faced with courage, need not be lived again. Lift up your eyes upon the day breaking for you. Give birth again to the dream. Amen. So may be.